What's up, everyone, and welcome back to Cinematic Reviews. I, of course, am your host, Chris, and this is the show about all things movies and TV. I have another Marvel-themed episode to you today, but it is Hulk-sized. I will be reviewing the 2003 Hulk film, along with talking about what the future holds for the Hulk character in the MCU, as well as ranking the Bruce Banners, the Hulks, and the General Rosses that we have gotten so far on the big screen. As a reminder, you can watch the show at youtube.com/the cinematic reviews, as well as listening to the show on your favorite podcast network. To kick today's episode off, let's talk about some Hulk-sized news and reactions. So the one piece of news I was able to scrounge up for this podcast was that we do have an official date scheduled for a Hulk movie, and that is May 19th, 2026. This is supposedly, quote, rumored that this is going to be the World War Hulk movie that all the fans have been wanting for. For those that aren't familiar with the World War Hulk storyline, this is where the Hulk is banished from Earth and sort of has to kind of survive on his own. We got a little bit of this storyline in Thor Ragnarok. If you remember when Thor went up against Hulk, uh, that was part of the World War Hulk storyline. But this looks like it's going to be an entire movie dedicated to that comic book run, which is very exciting. It's a movie that I've been waiting for as a Hulk fan. It's probably my favorite Hulk comic book storyline, aside from when he faces off against Wolverine, which is my all-time favorite. And for also those that don't know or aren't familiar with the whole situation with the Hulk character in the MCU, it's very similar to the issue with the rights with Spider-Man. Universal actually still has the screen rights to Hulk, so it's been very tough for Disney to even make or even develop a Hulk film for the MCU. But it looks like they are working with Universal and have a actual date scheduled for that. Whether Disney eventually buys out the Hulk character or they come up with some kind of contract that they had to do with Spider-Man and Sony, that's to be said still. I would put my money on some kind of buyout so that they have the rights for Hulk later on. That's kind of the future. What I think is going to happen with Spider-Man eventually is that Disney is going to just pull the plug and just buy out the character. Spider-Man's a little more tough because that is Sony's big moneymaker, and it sounds like they are in the midst of redoing their entire Spider-Man universe. But it's as far as the Hulk, I think that'd be a lot easier for Marvel to get their hands on rights-wise by just buying them out. So that is a real possibility. As far as casting, it sounds like Mark Ruffalo will be back as the Hulk, whether he'll be a side character or the main one. That is to be said. There are also rumors that Edward Norton, who previously played the Hulk in the Incredible Hulk film, is going to show up, as well as maybe even recasting Bruce slash the Hulk in the film as well, with a younger actor to kind of carry on the generations. I know that's what kind of the She-Hulk show was supposed to be for, but it turns out that didn't really land the way Disney wanted to, for obvious reasons. Maybe they even go to the route of the offspring of Hulk. We kind of got a glimpse of him as well in this She-Hulk. But there's a lot of things that they can do with the Hulk character, and I'll talk about that more later on in the show today. But as far as news, Hulk-related, that's the only thing we got that I could find was that we have an actual date coming out in 2026 for the film. So let's move on to today's feature film, which is the 2003 Hulk. So like I said, today's featured film is The Hulk, which was released on June 20th, 2003. It was directed by Ang Lee. This is the famous Hulk movie that a lot of people like to rip on. It was a huge movie when I was growing up back in 03. I remember seeing all the posters and the trailers and the advertisements because we were like finally getting a big uh, budget Hulk movie. Before that, all we really had was Lou Ferrigno's TV series back in the 70s, and then all the cartoons and all that was coming out at the time. So this was a huge thing, like it was for Spider-Man when that came out. This was the first on-screen live-action Hulk movie coming out by a big old studio, Universal. And it really didn't do all that well. It actually kind of bombed. and as the years have gone on with the different iterations, with Edward Norton taking over, with Mark Ruffalo taking over, it's kind of been banished and set to the offside as probably one of the worst comic book movies ever made. Uh, but at the time when it was coming out, it was a huge movie. It was really aimed at kids. I remember going into Toys R Us and having the Hulk smash gloves that my brother and I always wanted to get. So they just advertised the crap out of it. But it ultimately ended up flopping in the theaters and even on DVD. And then, as I said, as the years went by, it just kind of got lost in the dust with Edward Norton, Mark Ruffalo, and the MCU's version of the Hulk, which has been probably named the best version of the Hulk so far. So this movie really gets a bad rap, and for obvious reasons. I mean, the CGI was pretty mediocre. It looked like a video game at most of the time. You have those comic book style cutscenes as the movie goes on, which was really cool. It's a really cool concept. I just think Ang Lee really overused it. It's like every other scene they're using this kind of comic book panel uh, style of the cut screen. You have the one square here, one square here, and it's just really overused. The story itself is also not great. It turns out that the Hulk was made by his own dad, who's played by Nick Nolte. It's kind of a weak plot. And the action sequences were okay. I mean, as a kid growing up watching it on the big screen, it was pretty cool at the time. But now, as you watch it and how action sequences have like evolved in the movie world, it's just really, really bad. But what really holds it back is the terrible CGI. Even on the Hulk, there's a couple scenes where you could tell like that's where most of the budget went. But for the most part, the CGI is pretty video gamey, really, really terrible. So kind of aiming on the cast, which is a huge cast now. We have Eric Bana playing Bruce Banner, who's been in a bunch of movies. He's been in Troy, which was another big budget movie. He's been in all sorts of other things, Black Hawk Down. But this was kind of like his only toe tip into the comic book world. I can't recall him ever being in a comic book film after this one. He was okay as Bruce Banner. The Hulk itself was, I get the idea that Aang was going for, and it was a really cool concept because I think it's the only time we've ever gotten this where the angrier the Hulk gets, the bigger he gets, and you can really see that in Ang Lee's version of the Hulk. This is the only time we've ever seen it. The MCU Hulk, he doesn't really get bigger. Neither does Edward Norton's. This is the only time we see the Hulk actually physically get bigger, bigger, bigger as he gets angrier, which is like the only positive I can give this film and Ang Lee is that they stuck to the comic book in that aspect of the character. Um, we also have Jennifer Connelly as Betty, who has become a household name. She blew us all away in Top Gun and a bunch of other films, but she was actually pretty good as Betty. I think she's probably my favorite one. I think the other one we got was Liv Tyler in The Incredible Hulk, which she's really good too in there. But I think I honestly like Jennifer Connelly's take on Betty a little bit more than Liv Tyler's. We have Sam Elliott as General Ross, who is rocking the beautiful mustache that he always does. Shout out to all the ranch fans who love Sam Elliott's beautiful mustache in that show, and he's rocking it in here. It's a little more trimmed, it's kind of the military style mustache, but he's still rocking it. He was pretty good. He was just kind of angry. It seems like Ang Lee's only direction for him was like just to look mean, look angry the entire time he's in the movie. And then we have Nick Nolte, who plays Bruce's father, who turns out to be the villain, um, which is also kind of a weird plot thing too, where uh, we come into this movie and it seems like General Ross is the villain of this movie, and for probably half of it, he actually is the villain. But then we get to introduce to Nick Nolte's character, and it turns out that he's the villain too. So it's kind of weird how they like it's half Sam Elliott, half Nick Nolte as the villain. Doesn't really work. It's just confusing and it's very inconsistent. And that whole plot with Bruce being the boy and his dad killing his mom uh, was really weird. It used to kind of creep me out as a kid watching it. I just wanted to see the Hulk smash stuff on screen, but then you have this kind of dark side story where Nick Nolte accidentally hit Bruce's mom in the attempt to kill Bruce. It just wasn't really for kids, honestly. It was more adult story wise in that aspect. And I think that was another downfall of the movie as well. And then we have Josh Lucas, who I've seen in a bunch of films. I can't honestly name any at the top of my head, but he's kind of the douchebag of the film who's trying to take on the Hulk himself, similar to like Tim Roth did in the Incredible Hulk film. This is kind of where he is, where he's Talbot, who's just trying to take the Hulk's DNA and kind of experiment on it and replicate it, similar to what Ross tries to do in future films. So it's kind of a weird mishmash of how they use the characters in this movie compared to the Incredible Hulk and the MCU's version of the Hulk. So this movie is just a big old mess story wise, and it doesn't really hold up. The only thing that does hold up, like I said, is the angrier he gets, the bigger he gets, which is really comic book accurate. And then Jennifer Connelly's Betty, I really like. Eric Bana as the Bruce Banner Hulk, he was fine. Just didn't really care for him. I think they could have easily casted somebody better, which they eventually do with Ed Norton, who I think is actually pretty good as Bruce and as the Hulk. And then eventually we get to my favorite, Mark Ruffalo. But yeah, this movie is just really, it's the stinker that everybody remembers it being back in 2003. For kids, it was probably really cool, like myself at the time, with the scene where he's crushing the tanks and catching helicopter missiles in his hand, and that big old really big scene where he takes the missile, he kind of eats the tip of it off his mouth, and then he spits the warhead out at the helicopter. It was pretty cool seeing as a kid in the trailer. I think the big trailer shot back when if I remember right, was when Bruce is doing the old wiping the screen of the fog in the bathroom, and then you have the face of the Hulk coming, and he comes and shoots his hand out of the mirror. That was a big trailer shot I remember going up. But yeah, overall, this movie's pretty bad. I think in my ranking, I've listed it like 5 stars out of 10. Just very, very low level Marvel movie, especially with now living in the MCU world where basically Mark Ruffalo has taken that character by storm and become everybody's favorite, especially what he did in Thor Ragnarok, which is probably the best version of the Hulk that we've ever gotten. Aside from the first Avengers film, which he was really good too. But so speaking of the Hulk in the MCU, what is there to be told with him in the future? Um, the next possible appearance by Ruffalo's Hulk is probably going to be in the 2 Avengers movies coming up. Probably Doomsday and Secret Wars. I could see him appearing more in Secret Wars. Um, it's more sounding like Doomsday is going to be very Doctor Doom centric. I don't think the Hulk's going to have very much screen time in that one. They might save him for Secret Wars during that big multiverse battle. We could also, like I said at the beginning of the episode 2, we're going to get the new Hulk film in 2026, which is supposedly the World War Hulk movie, which everybody has been wanting for years. We kind of got teased that in Thor Ragnarok. And then maybe he cameos in some other projects. He did the last time we've seen the Hulk was in She-Hulk. Maybe he pops up in the Spider-Man movie. Maybe we just get a Bruce Banner cameo in Spider-Man, or maybe we see him in Fantastic Four. I'm not really sure where he would be able to pop up, but most likely they're probably gonna save him until the Avengers movies. Probably Secret Wars, most likely. We might get a cameo from Bruce in Doomsday, just kind of like, hey, everybody, remember Bruce is still in the universe. But we're probably still just going to get Secret Wars appearance of Hulk, and then, of course, the movie after that. I even jotted down some team ups that I would love to see. My number one team up that I want to see is him and Wolverine. We got teased that in the Deadpool and Wolverine movie, where Deadpool was, universe jumping, if you remember, with the TVA device, and we get that one shot of the brown and yellow suited Wolverine, and he pulls out his claws, and we see, Mark Ruffalo's Hulk's face and his adamantium claws. I think having just a Wolverine versus Hulk movie would make like $2 billion. Like that's what everybody wants. That's my number one team up that I want to see. Another team up would be, Deadpool. It'd be fun to see Hulk kind of just ripping apart Deadpool like we saw Juggernaut do in the Deadpool 2 movie. Another one would be Spider-Man. That could be another, like I said, Bruce Banner might pop up in the 4th Spider-Man movie as maybe kind of like a Tony Stark mentor like figure, or maybe he has to like fight with the Hulk. I don't know, but I've always wanted to kind of see what that would look like on screen with Spider-Man and the Hulk. And then another one would be, we just had Red Hulk. I talked about him a little bit in the previous episode of the show, Captain America: Brave New World. I think it'd be really fun to kind of get like a Bruce Banner, General Ross reuniting, and then maybe even get the Green Hulk and the Red Hulk to fight. That'd be really really cool. So yeah, like I said, this movie was a pretty big stinker. I still recommend you watching it if you are a Hulk fan or just a Marvel fan in general, just to kind of get the history of how the Hulk character has evolved. As the movie industry has evolved as well. This movie certainly doesn't give the character justice at all, except for the fact that Ang Lee decided to stick to the comics with him getting bigger and bigger as he got angrier. I honestly wish the MCU would have leaned into that a little bit more, but they decided against it. That'd be a good question to ask Kevin Feige why they decided not to do that. Maybe budgetary reasons, or maybe they just felt like he would be too overpowered, which I totally get it. It's tough now with characters like the Hulk, like Thanos, Captain Marvel, where you kind of have to not really dumb them down, more like depower them a little bit, just for plot's sake and all that. But no, I think the future for the Hulk is still bright. These last couple phases of the MCU have been pretty wild with the introducing different characters, but I think these two Avengers movies coming out are going to really showcase, like, remember Hulk, Captain America, Iron Man, like these guys are still the main core of the MCU, and I'm really looking forward to Mark Ruffalo coming back as Bruce Banner, excuse me, because I really really like him, and which I'll get to my rankings here right now, actually. So since there's only a few Hulk movies out there, we're going to do something a little different for the rankings segment on today's show. I'm actually going to give my rankings for three different characters in the Hulk universe: Bruce Banner, Hulk, and then General Ross. So starting off with General Ross, we've got the three. We have Harrison Ford, William Hurt, and Sam Elliott. Um, Actually, my rankings go in that order. I really, really liked Harrison Ford's take as President Ross in Captain America: Brave New World. I talked about him a lot in previous episode of the show. I just really like what Harrison Ford brought to the character. He really brought his presidential vibe from Air Force One, if you remember that movie, where he also played the president. Um, and then he was really good with the Red Hulk stuff. I know it wasn't really Harrison Ford as the Red Hulk. He probably did some, CGI work behind the scenes, but when he was the president, when he was talking with Sam Wilson, I really liked what he brought to that character. And then number two, which is actually in the same universe, that is William Hurt, who started off with the character in The Incredible Hulk. Then he went on to play him in Civil War. I think he was in Age of Ultron. He did Black Widow, I think, as well. So he was in a few different projects in the MCU. He was really good. I really respect what he brought with the character. At the time, he blew it out of the waters, but I think Harrison Ford just kind of took that next step up and just really knocked that character, brought something fresh and new to that character that William Hurt spent multiple years, multiple projects kind of building. And I really respect him. Rest in peace to him. He was a great actor, and it's unfortunate that he had to pass away. And had to recast him with Harrison Ford. But I think that was the best choice. Honestly, was Harrison Ford to kind of build off what William Hurt started in the universe. And then we have Sam Elliott, who, like I said in the featured film segment, his only direction in Hulk was just to look angry, look mean. I love Sam Elliott, love the actor, love the man, love the stash. I just think he could have brought something a little different to the character. He just kind of had one direction and he followed that one direction, and that was just to look mean, to look angry, and just kind of grumble and yell like Sam Elliott does very very well, I should say. But he just really didn't bring a whole lot to the character, so that's why I think he's the least likable one in that list. Moving on to Bruce Banner, I have Mark Ruffalo is number one. No surprise there. I kind of hinted that at that during the episode today. Just really like what he brought. I really love him in Thor Ragnarok and the first Avengers movie. Um, when I heard Mark Ruffalo was gonna be the Hulk back in, when did they announce it? Like 2010, kind of replacing Edward Norton. I was a little bummed because I did like Edward Norton, but it turns out that Mark Ruffalo just knocked it out of the park. I love the science stuff that he brings to Bruce. I love the humor that he brings. And then when the Hulk comes in, uh, really like the design of that Hulk. He even gets a lot of comedic stuff, like in Thor Ragnarok, Infinity War. He had a lot of comedic stuff, so he held his own, and I love this chemistry with Robert Downey's Tony Stark as well, which really helped, I think, elevate the character. Was kind of his relationship and his chemistry with Robert Downey. So at number two, Edward Norton from the Incredible Hulk film. I really like Edward Norton. Actually, he was pretty good. Um, for those that aren't familiar with, the man that is Edward Norton, he does tend to be a bit aggressive and hands-on with the project, which turns out during the research is why they kind of parted ways with him. He really tried to fight with the studio heads a lot and kind of make the film his own, and they just kind of butted heads a lot. So they're like, okay, we're going to recast you. We're going to bring in Ruffalo, who I guess was their original person that they wanted for the Hulk in the Incredible Hulk film. I think it was due to scheduling or something like that, where they couldn't get Ruffalo. But then once they kind of realized that Edward Norton was really trying to take over that character, they're just like, okay, we need to part ways with him. Let's go get Ruffalo, who happened to be open at the time when they filmed the first Avengers film. So it kind of worked out in Marvel's hands. But I still really liked Edward Norton. He was a pretty cool Bruce Banner. Then we have Bill Bixby, who did the old, I think it was 1977 when that show came out. Uh, I haven't really seen like all the episodes of the show. I've seen clips and shots of the show on YouTube. He was pretty cool, for the time. I'm sure it was awesome seeing him play Bruce Banner. But that was back, in '77, where now we have high caliber actors like Edward Norton and Mark Ruffalo playing them. So he's there at number three. And then now I have Eric Bana at number four, who he was fine. They could have easily put anybody in that role. He wasn't really, he didn't bring anything special to the character like Mark Ruffalo or even Edward Norton did. So he's the bottom of the list for me. He was fine. He was okay. He was kind of a crappy Bruce in a crappy Hulk film. That's just kind of what it was. So now to the big guy. We have the rankings for the Hulk in all the projects that I've seen. Number one, I have the MCU. Again, surprise, surprise. I've been kind of hinting at that the whole time. I really like what MCU did with the Hulk. I love the design of them. I love the kind of humor that they bring. My favorite shot of the Hulk in the MCU is probably that scene where, we have, I think it's Age of Ultron, where we have the Hulkbuster taking on the Hulk. And, Tony Stark's is pounding the crap out of his face. He spits a tooth out, and you just get that one shot of Robert Downey just going, I'm sorry, and then just totally wails on him. Probably my favorite shot of the Hulk for sure. Favorite moment. Number two, The Incredible Hulk. I really like I don't remember who directed that film, but I liked, the slender, jacked look that they went with him. He was kind of more, they went with like a gray, greenish color to him. Very dirty, kind of raggedy black hair. I've seen certain iterations of that in comic books. A couple of people have borrowed that look. I really like the look. Very slender, not like the big kind of bodybuilding style that they did in the 2003 Hulk, and then they kind of met in the middle for the MCU's take on the Hulk. But I still really like them. So he's at number two. Number three, the Hulk, the 2003 Hulk. He's only at number three here because I like the fact that they made him get bigger as he got angrier. He was fine, CGI wise. Really video gamey. They really rocking the purple shorts, which they don't really do in the Incredible Hulk or the MCU's Mark Ruffalo's version of the Hulk. They make a joke of the purple pants in the Incredible Hulk film, but they don't really revisit that. This one really hammers on. I think most of the shots we see with the Hulk is in the purple shorts, so I'll give him there. That's why he's at three. And then at 4 is Lou Ferrigno, who is basically Lou Ferrigno in green paint. They back in '77, they didn't really have the budget to do all the CGIing, so they're like, let's get the big bodybuilder Lou Ferrigno and let's just paint his ass green. So he's at the bottom there. Still love the guy. He pops up in um, both 2003 Hulk and the Incredible Hulk. So they kind of keep him in the universe just because he's such an iconic figure with the Hulk character. But he's at the bottom because it's just a big bodybuilder in green paint. So, well, those are my rankings for the 3 characters. I'll post all those on all the Cinematic Reviews social media pages. So look out for that. But yeah, that's today's show. Next time, we're going to be diving into Ben Affleck's Daredevil in preparation for my review of Daredevil Born Again, which is currently streaming on Disney Plus right now every Tuesday. So go and check that out and get ready for some Daredevil action in the coming episodes. Later, everyone.